Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Sam Houston Bearkats, who finished 3-9 last season. They wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with their spring game on April 20th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is the sports of SHSU on X. He is the co-host of March to the Pod. He does work for their NIL collective Cat Fund. He is Ben Sorrells. Ben can be found at Sports of SHSU on X. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Man, happy to be here. Love the intro. Love the fight song and ready to talk some Sam Houston football.
All right, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball and talk about the guys up front along that defensive line. They lose a couple of good ones, and Akeem Smith and Chris Scott, both of them out of eligibility. But despite those losses, they have a good core of guys coming back with a fair amount of experience. How did the defensive line shape up this spring?
Yeah, so starting on the edge, edge looks really good. I mean, Javon Leon is back. He's kind of the big name that everybody knows. Isaiah Nixon is back. He kind of plays that hybrid position. Then you've got some other names like Jaden Phillips, Bryson Hayes, Seth Mason on the edge that are going to be good. You mentioned some of the guys on the interior that we lost. That was a big pain point this spring because you didn't really have a true nose or guy that can play on the interior. And so that was a problem. But right after spring ball, they addressed it. They added 4 defensive tackles in the portal. You added Quincy Wright from Oregon State. You added Cordell Pat from the JUCO level. You added Denver Warren from New Mexico State, and then you added Marcus Moore from North Texas. And so 4 guys that I think are ready to play at this level. And you really address a need that was pretty apparent during the spring. I think you were good on the edge, pretty lacking on the interior, but we hit the portal hard, and I feel a lot better about the interior. We'll see how that playing time shakes out during the training camp.
Who do you feel needs to step up most in this room?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be guys on the interior. It's under a new defensive coordinator in Skylar Cassidy. We played a lot of 3 down front in the past, and so you're going to be relying on the interior a lot more. You're going to put at least 2 of them out there at front or at a time. A guy like Marcus Moore had 20 plus tackles at North Texas last year. He's proven and experienced at this level. So he's a guy that's going to have to probably step in and be a leader there on the interior because I think you feel good on the edge. You have good pieces on the interior, but they're going to have to step up and prove it. So probably Marcus Moore is the biggest name that to watch for and the guy that probably needs to step up and take a big role this year.
The linebacking group lost their leading tackler from 2023 and first-team All-CUSA defender, Trevor Williams, who ran out of eligibility. Williams about doubled the number 2 tackler on the team. Williams was pretty much just a tackling machine out there. While Markel Perry played a lot on the line, the roster had listed him as an outside linebacker, and he is 2 out of eligibility. They bring back its second leading tackler from 2023 in Kavian Gaither. He was their leading sack getter and their leading sack getter, Isaiah Nixon. How did the linebacking group look in the spring?
Yeah, I thought it was good. Kavian Gaither is kind of in that leader role now, was the WAC Defensive Player of the Year in 2022, was also good last year. And so I think he's going to take another step forward and kind of be the leader there. Some other names to watch, I think Trey Fields is a name to know. He's a guy that I think has had the talent and ability to play, but it's been such a loaded room the last few years. So I would look for him to play a lot. Sincere Jackson, kind of the same thing. He's been injured and has had guys ahead of him, but I think he's super talented. You added Chantavius Johnson from Memphis very recently at the linebacker position. And so I think you're going to be able to replace Trevor kind of in the aggregate between Kavian and those 3 other guys. And then I think Isaiah Nixon's game models Markel's very, very similarly. And Markel did miss a couple games last year, and Isaiah was able to fill in really, really well. He was a guy that contributed at Texas State before he got to Sam Houston also. So I think the room's going to be okay. Obviously, losing Trevor Williams is a big loss. The leadership of Trevor Williams, I think, is a big thing. But I think Trey Fields getting a shot, Sincere getting a shot, Isaiah Nixon, hopefully taking another step forward. I think the room is going to be okay. Doesn't have the names or maybe the talent that it did before, but I think it's still good enough to compete at this level.
So moving over to the defensive backfield, they lose DeMarcus Crosby after the spring over to New Mexico State. Isaiah Downs and Donovan Adkins have graduated, and those are some big losses. But you do have some guys coming back like Caleb Weaver, David Fisher, and Devon Armstead, among others, coming back here in 2024. How did the defensive backfield shape up in the spring?
Yeah, it's going to look a lot different than it did last year. There's a couple guys, like you mentioned, Caleb Weaver's returning. He's kind of a nickel guy, nickel safety. He's going to return. David Fisher was one of your starting corners last year, and he'll be back. But those are the two guys from last year that we saw a lot of that are returning. Saw a little bit of Davion Armstead, but he was hurt most of last year. But he'll be back. So him and Fisher are your top two cover corners on the outside. Weaver's going to be playing safety. And then you've got Jalen Jimerson, who you brought in from Liberty. He was a big piece of that Liberty secondary when they went to the Fiesta Bowl last year. So he's going to have a big role. And then you also picked up Nikwe Hawkins from Virginia Tech. He didn't play last year, but in 2022 was really good for Virginia Tech. And so those are some of the names to watch. Also picked up Jalen O'Neal from ACU, who's a super talented kind of younger kid who I think is going to be pretty good. And then another name to watch at corner is Chanson Prox, redshirt freshman. He was all CUSA freshman team last year. He's another corner to watch. So it's going to be a lot of new faces this year, some coming up from the depth that we had last year, some are transfers. But I think it's still going to be a pretty good group, and I'm excited about what they can do this year.
All right, if you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
Yeah, I mentioned him a little bit just a second ago. I'm going to go with Davion Armstead. Played in 3 games last year and was very, very good when he played. Had multiple pass breakups at BYU and against New Mexico State. Only played a couple games due to injury, but looks physically very impressive this spring. 6'1", 6'2", great size. Has put on some good weight, it looks like, this offseason. And when he did play last year was really good. So I think he's a guy that could really be a shutdown kind of all-conference corner this year for Sam Houston, and I think he could be the breakout guy.
All right, if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you are listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support, and until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.